Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. It is episode 313. My name is Rachel. I'm coming to you from just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. This is Woolen Spinning. We are back to normal. We are back to our regular scheduled programming at a slightly different time, and I will talk about that in just a moment. I want to welcome everybody to this place. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend it with us and with our community and with me. It means a lot that you would take some time out of your day to spend it with me and to hear about what I'm working on and to spend some time learning about Handspun and how to use our Handspun yarn in our projects and how to go about that successfully. It means the world. So thank you so much for being here. And I want to welcome everybody. We are a very inclusive community and quite a large community. And I'm amazed again and again every time I look at Slack or I come on here to the live chat. And you guys are just welcoming one another with open arms and being so kind and so forthcoming with your knowledge and your support of one another and helping each other be successful in your projects and your making and your creativity. It's really quite incredible. So thank you so much for everybody for being here. Chat is already off to a wonderful start. It's good to see everybody. We are streaming at 11 a.m. Pacific. Before I forget and we get into the show and I forget to mention, we moved the show to 12 noon Pacific in April to accommodate my schedule and also to accommodate Rebecca's schedule so that she could do the live stream. And she's done 2 now, which is amazing. She did awesome. And 12 noon actually made more problems for me than leaving it at 10 a.m. Pacific would have. So lesson learned. 12 noon ended up just conflicting with almost everything that I had going on every week. So we made it work and it was all fine in the end, but it was less than ideal. And I also found that it being so late in the day for me, it just was getting too far into the day. We used to stream at 12 noon Pacific on Wednesdays a few years ago. For those who are working through the archives, you probably found some of those shows. And at that time, the way that the kids' school was, that worked really super well because Nora was often napping at that time. James was in school. 10 a.m. since they've started at their new school was working really super well, but it doesn't work for Rebecca because it's right at their lunchtime and the girls come home for lunch in their community. So all of the gory details aside, we've decided to compromise and kind of meet in the middle because then she can live stream most of the time, but it's not quite so late for me. So we're going to do 11 a.m. Pacific, and it also ends up not being quite so late for Europe because there's a lot of people that are watching in mainland Europe and it just gets to be too late. People have to work in the morning. They've got to be up. It's nice to have a nice evening and have something like this to participate in and participate in the chat and connect with your community, but I also don't want you guys going to bed at like 11 o'clock at night. So we listened to some of the feedback that we got. We sort of were like, hey, there's got to be a happy medium in here somewhere, and I think 11 a.m. will be sort of the happy medium. We'll see how it goes through the summer. If it really doesn't work and things are just kind of all over the place and not really working, we might have to have 2 separate times for the live stream and a separate time for the Wool Circle. I just love the consistency of every week at the same time we're streaming. So let me know. I really appreciate your guys' feedback, and I appreciate that our community is like that. You guys are always willing to share and be respectful in the way that you give feedback and whatnot. You guys are just, I know I'll hear from you guys and it'll be really helpful, and then we can actually make change. So thank you for that. I am wearing my Jethro cardigan. I finished this last summer. It is, all of the squares are hand spun, but the main color, like the main yarn that's for the sleeves and that crocheted all of the squares together, and the collar, that is all a commercial yarn that is completely like escaping me right now. What was it called? It wasn't a yarn that I had used previously. What was it called? It's right here, and I didn't even put it in my project page. That's not like me at all. That's really not like me. I'll have to update that. I know I still have the ball bands. I feel like it might be wool, but I don't know. That doesn't sound quite right. Anyways, it was a lovely yarn. It worked beautifully with my Handspun, and this was all of like natural shades of stuff that I had in my stash from like years of doing samples and, you know, having bits and pieces of whatever left over. So there's all sorts of like stuff in here, and I can look at it and be like, oh yeah, that was that, and oh yeah, that was that. A couple of them, like this one here, was a little bit finer, and the crochet ended up sort of stretching a little bit in the fabric, like the weight of the sweater pulling on it, it sort of bagged it out and pulled it out a little bit. If I would actually like to make this again because it was just like really fun. Some of that I would actually take into account. So I should have just crocheted this one on a slightly smaller hook, and then it would have just had a little bit more density, and it still would have stretched a little bit, and it would have worked. It still would have blocked out fine, but it just would have had a little bit more structure. But some of the other ones, like these ones here that had slightly thicker yarns, worked really super well. I can stand up and show you the back, so you guys can see all of the different squares, and you can have a look at my Ravelry project page for more photos. And I did talk about this sweater quite a lot on the podcast last summer because I was working on it for so long. So hopefully you guys can kind of see. I actually thought I had lost it. I haven't worn it since I finished it. I wore it once, and I couldn't, I put it somewhere and I couldn't find it. And I thought, oh my goodness, like I think it might have been, yeah, I think it might have gone out of the house by accident. And then I had a thought, and I was like, no, I don't think that I would have done that. I'm positive that if it got caught up with something or got caught up with a stack of stuff, that I probably just put it somewhere in a drawer in one of my wardrobe drawers, and I just have like, and I'm not seeing it. So I just thought, nope, I'm gonna have faith that I will find it. It is somewhere in one of my drawers. And because the last month has been sort of very up and down in terms of energy levels, I just thought I'm going to trust the universe, and it is going to be found. So on Saturday night, I was looking for a different shawl. This isn't a shawl, this is a sweater, but I was looking for a shawl and it was underneath. It was right there, folded beautifully under the shawl, and I had put them away back in the winter thinking it's getting warmer here and I'm probably going to be not really wearing some of my big winter shawls anymore, because I have one of my shawls that's alpaca wool. I wear it all the time in the winter. I pretty much live in it through the winter. It's so warm, it's so lovely, it's beautiful next to my skin. I always get tons of compliments on it. I dyed it in logwood years ago, and it's just one of those like most worn items, you know. It was because it's so dark and it's purple, and it's a dark, dark purple. It was sitting perfectly on top of my Jethro, and I couldn't see the Jethro. So as soon as I lifted it out of my drawer, there was my Jethro, and I was like, of course, thank you, universe. I knew I wouldn't have given it away. So there you go. Christine, we were going to do a Jethro Cal this summer, a crochet along, sort of a spin along, crochet along, and sort of go through your scraps and you know, use your stuff. But me and Rebecca actually have something else that we're working on for our spin along, knit along for Tour de Fleece and knitting this summer. Rebecca's actually working on it right now and sort of putting it together. And it's to celebrate her book release. So we kind of put it on the back burner. And also the Jethro, it's still a popular pattern and people are still making it, but it's sort of not, it sort of had its moment in the sun, and now people are sort of moving on to other things. So I'm not going to do, I would like to make another sweater like this, but not with this particular granny square. There's a couple of beautiful crocheted, well, not a couple, there's tons of beautiful crocheted squares and patterns out there for squares that you could just substitute in as instead of these granny squares that would be a little bit more interesting to make. You could even do a variety of 2 or 3 different kinds of squares and then sub them in. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I was thinking like one of the, I think it's called the crocheted moss stitch, I think, is one of the ones that I was looking at. Diana Twist has been doing this whole deep dive into crochet and doing all these different things with crochet, and she's come up with some absolutely beautiful squares. And that idea was percolating last summer, and it's stuck with me through the winter as like a portable summer project. I'm really not feeling the sweater knitting right now. It's been like that for the last year or so. And so I was thinking, like, what else could I do that would actually result in something that would use up some yarn, but would also be really fun to work on, because I'd be learning some new skills, and that keeps coming back to me again and again. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. There was something else that I was going to mention. about the summer and about what we're doing and what's going on, but it is escaping me. I did want to mention really quickly, I had some really, really lovely notes from people in the community throughout the month of April, just saying they were thinking about me, no need to respond, but that they just, you know, were thinking about me. And I just wanted to say thank you to those people. You know who you are. Anybody who is sending me well wishes, you know, through the, you know, through the universe, if you will. Thank you so much. Things went very, very well through my radiation treatments. I basically had no side effects except for the expected fatigue. And I was kind of joking with one of the general practitioners, one of the GPs about it, because I was like, I don't know if I'm tired because I'm driving here every day or if like treatment is tiring. And she's like, yeah, exactly. She's like, it's probably a bit of both. So I had my 12 treatments. Everything went really super smoothly. I never had any pain or discomfort. I was a little bit sunburned, which was kind of funny. It looked like I had been in Mexico for a week. And the only lasting side effect that I have that is actually, it's really annoying, but it's not the end of the world, is everything tastes like baking soda. So my saliva tastes like baking soda, food tastes like baking soda, and I can taste food, but then as I chew and swallow and stuff, I've got this like overwhelming baking soda flavor. So I was saying to a close friend this morning, it makes eating really just not an enjoyable experience right now, but I found some things that actually taste quite good and taste normal, if you will. And I've been doing quite well, and I haven't lost any weight, which is what, of course, they are most concerned about. They don't want you to lose any weight. And other than that, like I think on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'm probably like an 8.5, feeling like I'm pretty much back to myself and back to normal, and I have my energy back, and I feel really hopeful and really positive, kind of back to my old self. So that's felt really, really good. So thank you to those who asked and who were wondering how I was doing. I appreciate that people haven't been sort of inundating me with a lot of questions, and that's really meant a lot. So thank you so much. I ended up not losing any hair, and the reason was because actually just before I started treatment, they had upgraded all of the machines that were that are now able to give much more targeted dosing with way fewer side effects. And so I kind of benefited from the fact that they upgraded all the machines and put in all new machines right before I started treatment. So some of the things that they had sort of warned me about that were probable, but not necessarily a given, I ended up not having. And one of those things was I didn't end up losing any hair. The sunburn was way, way, way decreased. It was only a slight redness, like I said. And the other one was, they thought that I would probably have a little bit of throat pain by the end of the second week. And I ended up having no pain at all through the whole thing, which was wonderful. And that was, they credited that to the upgrades, which was wonderful. It was wonderful. So very, very good. Very, very happy. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about spinning and knitting. Let's talk about why we're here. I have a little bit of housekeeping to share with you guys, and then I just wanted to give a little plug for Wool and Spinning Radio this month, and then we will carry on and get into the show. I have basically a finished objects parade for you guys today. It's just everything that I have been finishing over the last week or so. I had 2 projects on both looms that have been on there for over a year, and one of them had been on the loom for 20 months, which is the gap between my kids, and I was like, this is just too long. But I got that finished. I'm really excited to share that with you guys. I finished a massive scarf that I'm also very excited to share with you guys. So those are the 2 things off the loom. I have a finished sweater for you guys, and I also have a finished pair of socks. I also have a whole bunch of yarn, which is all right here. So let's, so we're not going to do community participation today as much as you guys have been making up a storm as well. I thought that this would be a really great episode to be able to kind of catch you guys up on everything that I've finished and been working on, and then talk a little bit about some projects that I'm sort of planning and looking at this spring. So let's do the housekeeping. Let's do credits, and then we'll get into the actual show afterwards. And then we'll do a little bit of housekeeping and all that kind of stuff to kind of bring you guys up to speed, because there are a few things going on that you guys need to know about. All right, I will see you on the other side. Okay. Sorry, excuse me. A couple of things for housekeeping. I just wanted to mention one more time, the show is going to shift to 11 a.m. Pacific. You guys know about that. Housekeeping. There are a few things that are coming up in the community, and I wanted to mention the first one that is the most important thing for those who are newer members. So if you are a newer member, or you're feeling like you're still not totally sure about where things are, and you've maybe been a part of the community for a little while, but you're still not super comfortable navigating all the things, this is for you. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and Rebecca has the spoons to be able to do it with you guys right now, and to take this on, which which is amazing. And it also gives you guys an opportunity to meet her, since you don't see her and interact with her on the live stream. It gives you a chance to sort of get to know her a little bit in these onboarding calls. So she mentioned about this for the Wool Circle last week, but for the general community, this is really important for you guys. So especially those who've been kind of on the fence about joining and joining the community, and you're sort of feeling like, well, what is Slack, and what is this, and what is Patreon, and what are all these things? So this is for you. Once you join Patreon, so just go on to patreon.com/woolenspinning/join, choose a tier that you think is going to work for you, sign up, and then at the end of the month, every month, there's going to be this thing called onboarding calls. It's going to be on Zoom, and Rebecca will go through everything with you, and she will show you all the things that you need to know for navigating the community. She will show you what Slack is and how to find all the things on Slack. She will show you Patreon and how to navigate all the things on Patreon. She will show you the collections on Patreon so that you can access previous content and watch through stuff that you're interested in at your specific place in your spinning journey that you're looking for. It's on a rolling schedule so that we can catch basically all the time zones in the world, which is pretty incredible. Most of our community right now is based sort of in North America. We had a few people in South America that I think we have a couple of people in South America. I know we have somebody in Brazil for sure. We used to have a couple people in Chile, but I think they've kind of drifted away over the years, because that was like way back at the beginning, but definitely Brazil. We have people in Europe, mainland Europe, the UK. We have people in and around the Mediterranean, and which is Europe, but further east, so Eastern Europe. And then we have people in Australia, New Zealand. We've got people in Southeast Asia. And so trying to catch all of those time zones is like, you guys can imagine, it's very difficult. So long story short, they will be on a rolling schedule. So if the time for that meeting that month doesn't work for you, watch for the next month, because the time hopefully will work for you. So it'll roll between 12 noon on a Wednesday Pacific, 6 p.m. Pacific, on a Wednesday, and then a Saturday morning. So hopefully there will be something in there that will catch you. So if you're sort of a newer member, having difficulty navigating all the things and navigating all the links, definitely come, and you don't need to sign up or anything. There will be a post the day before on Patreon, just like with Maker Morning. The link will be there. It's actually the same link as Maker Morning, and you can just pop in and ask all your questions and find out from Rebecca where all the things are. So you're going to see that as a regular thing going forward. The first one was this past Wednesday. There's another one at the end of this month for people who are just jumping on board. So please join. Anybody is welcome. You can ask all your questions, find out where everything is. If she doesn't know, she'll ask me and she'll get back to you. So that is the big thing, is watching for those onboarding calls. And I hope that serves you guys and helps you to navigate some of the things so that you can really get the most out of the community that you're looking for and that you deserve. Okay, so without further ado, let's just catch up on housekeeping. There's a few things that you guys need to see. If there's anything in the housekeeping video, there's no audio, it's just reading. If there's something that you need to make a note of, or you want to just jot down or whatever, just pause, make your notes, and then press play again, or go back and watch it later. But hopefully these help so that I'm not sitting here talking at you about things the whole time. This is actually quite a bit faster. I'll see you guys on the other side. Okay, and then last but not least, Wool and Spinning Radio this month is released. It features our very own Lisa, and it was a really fun episode that Rebecca had actually thought about the topic of a while ago, and it was about making an isolated community. So those of us in our community who are making in relative isolation for many different reasons, but the original idea for the episode was geographical, was living somewhere where there isn't a thriving community, and I sort of took a bit of a back seat with this episode and sort of asked some of the questions and let Lisa and Rebecca do the most of the talking, because I am not in an isolated community. I almost kind of have the opposite, where there's like too much going on. And then also we have our online community. Thank you so much for saying that, Tessa. She said it was such a great episode. Thank you. It was such a pleasure having Lisa on the show, and we already have had several requests to have her back on. So Lisa, I'm looking at you. And yeah, it was a really fun episode to record. So thank you so much for taking the time, Lisa. And also thank you to all of you for being so responsive and being excited about the episode. That meant a lot. It is available wherever you get your audio podcasts, and you can also access it on Patreon. And I'll post the link in the live chat because I know that helps some people. And you can go and have a listen. Okay, I think that is everything that I needed to cover today. It's because we haven't streamed, like I haven't seen you guys for about a month. So there's just a few things to chat about. I agree, Dion, Lisa rocks. So it's important for me to catch up on all the things with you guys. I have, like I said, quite a few things to share with you and quite a few things to show. I'm going to I thought I would save my breed blends and color study for more toward the end of the show, because it ties in beautifully with projects that I'm planning and that I'm sort of thinking about for this spring and into the summer. So why don't we do Skeined, like finished handspun toward the end of the show? But in keeping with our sort of handspun, hand knit, like theme here, we'll do a little bit of handspun knitting, and then we'll do a little bit of weaving, and then a handspun knitting, and then weaving. How's that? And so the first thing I want to share with you was, actually, you guys can look at pretty photos while I'm talking, because that's always really fun. Okay, oh no, wait, hang on. I'm so out of practice, you guys. I'm so out of practice. We have to do dividers. Here we go. Okay, it's official. We are talking about finished objects. I don't like to say FOs because not everybody, if you're not a knitter, you don't know what like a whip is or an FO. But for those who aren't knitters with a capital K, an FO is a finished object and a whip is a work in progress. I heard somebody on a podcast recently talking, like using those, like just saying faux and whips. And I was like, ooh, if you're not a knitter, you don't necessarily know, because those are terms that have kind of come up in the knitting world over the last like 10 or 15 years. But if you're a spinner weaver, or you're just a spinner, or you're a weaver, you don't necessarily, and you're not a knitter, you wouldn't know. So finished objects. So this skein is Sweet Georgia Yarns. It was March of 2016 Fiber Club. It was superwash merino nylon. It was 85% superwash merino and 15% nylon. I spun this on my Shacked match list that I had at the time. And at that time I was doing spinning Fiber Club for Sweet Georgia. So every month Felicia would release a different colorway on yarn and on fiber. And then I would spin up the fiber to show what it would look like if you spun it the way that she recommended. So it was kind of mindless spinning every month that I had to look forward to. I really enjoyed just kind of sitting down and, you know, spinning the thing every month. It was kind of a nice way of being able to enjoy Fiber Club, but not letting it pile up in my stash, because I always had a deadline. I had to have it finished by the last week of the month. And it was nice to sort of have that. This particular braid, Felicia had written in her recommendations that she didn't, because there's that lime green in there, and I think there's a really great photo here. There's that lime green in there. Oh, it just kept going. Why did it stop? There we go. hang on. So there's that lime green in there. You can see it in the fiber there too. And there's also that beautiful dark teal that's in the skein as well. And her concern was if you did like a traditional 3-ply or you stripped it a lot and started to really blend the colors, that beautiful kind of lime green sort of Rello-y type color would get lost in the final skein. And so she had recommended for the spinning recommendations to do a chain ply. So that was how I had to spin it, because I was spinning it to her recommendations. So the skein ended up being, I don't actually remember how many yards it was exactly. I think it was 325 yards, something like that, for 114 grams of fiber, something like that. It was a little tiny bit thicker, like working with this yarn now versus when I spun it almost 10 years ago. It's funny because now I can see how my spinning over the years has not only improved, but it's the consistency of the draft that's the big thing. So there's areas in the chain ply where it was actually like significantly thicker than what I would tolerate now. But that's okay, because you know what? The yarn was totally knittable and there was nothing wrong with it in terms of like the knitting. And what I ended up doing was I needed a project for going through treatment. I knew I would be sitting and waiting quite a lot. For all, they were pretty much on time the whole time. There was a few days where they were like 45 minutes behind. I think it happened twice out of the 12. But then you're also waiting for appointments afterwards, and you have to follow up with different people. And there's just, it's not a quick and dirty in and out. So I wanted a project that I could pick up and put down. These are cycling really fast. Why are they cycling so quickly? They were, let me just fix it's just going too fast. There we go. That's better. 2 seconds is not fast, is too fast. So I wanted a project that I could pick up and put down that was basically mindless, that I could just sit there and like knit. And so I cast these on my first, I cast them on at one of my initial appointments back in back in March. And I sort of started in my head calling these my cancer socks. I know, like, you know, I didn't really know what else to call them. But in my mind, that was sort of how I like, you know, thought of them. And the funny thing is that they knit up just incredibly quickly. I had the first foot done on the first sock within that first week, and then I had the second sock cast on and the heel turned within a couple more days after that. And then I just kept knitting up the leg, and I wanted to maximize as much of the yarn as I could, but by the time I got where I got on the leg, they were just getting too long. So I did about a 2-inch cuff, and Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, and I just kind of at some point, like, I just had to finish them. Like, they were just getting too long. So I did end up with more yarn left over than I had hoped, but they're really pretty. They came out more matching than I thought that they would. I thought they were going to be really quite different, but they're actually not too bad. I remember stripping the fiber into little nests and then spinning from the nests, but I don't remember, and I stripped the entire length of the braid, but I remember pre-drafting, but I don't remember like if I, you know, made sure that the strips were sort of all equal weight. I'm not sure I had some of that knowledge back then necessarily. I think it was probably just strip and spin. That could be really taken quite wrong, what I just said, but it worked out, you know, for the most part, they worked out. The one sock, there's more of the teal, like it stripes a few more times than on the other sock. There probably was some strips in this one. There's probably a couple more, like maybe some little strips that, you know, maybe were a little bit thinner, and then there wasn't quite as much fiber as there was in some of these ones where they obviously striped a little bit slower. But overall, you know, they're pretty matchy-matchy. I also am a bit concerned about how big they are. I think the foot is going to be a little bit too long for me. These may end up being Mikes. They might not be socks for me, because these are my size 9 shoe blockers. These are Mike's sock blockers, and they fit on here perfectly, but on mine, which is a size 7, they were too big. So these might end up being Mike's, which is totally fine. I have no, I don't feel any like that they have to be mine by any stretch. If they fit Mike and he wants to have them, he loves Handspun hand knit socks, and he'll wear them in the winter. He uses them a lot. I'm happy for him to have them. So a very quick project, really lovely to have to work on. It was nice to be able to pull something out of my out and just work on. And it was funny because the techs started asking me about them. They're like, oh, where are you at now? Have you turned your heel? Because I was like, at one point they came to get me and I was like, I can't, I got to finish this row. And he was like, oh yeah, no, it's totally fine. But it was because I was right at the point where I was turning the heel and they were running behind, but they had gotten caught up and I couldn't put it down. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But they were like, no, like, what are you doing? And let's see. Because most people just sit there on their phones, right? And, you know, I think the fact that I was actually working on something, they were like, oh, what are you doing? Because you get to know them. You're going there every day. So yeah, it was kind of fun. So that's kind of my fun project that I had to look forward to every day when I went to the hospital. Oh, that's a good point, actually. Amanda, at first I didn't pick up on the joke, but I did now. She said some knitters are more familiar with UFOs instead of FOs. Yeah, because they're unfinished. I love that. Ongoing projects, ops. I like that. I've never heard that before. I think that's really fun too. So fun socks. And I'm glad that they're done. They were fun to work on, and I haven't done socks for so long, which I know you guys know. It has been so long since I've made socks, and I sort of thought, you know, I'm just gonna cast on a pair. Felt really inspired by all of the socks that Rebecca's been making on the Wool Circle. And I just thought, you know, maybe I should just cast on a pair and just see how I feel. The other thing that happened with these was I thought that I pulled out 2.25 millimeter needles to knit these in, so US size 1s, and I accidentally pulled out 2.5 millimeter US size 1.5 needles. And because the yarn is actually a little bit thicker than what I would like, than what my recent sock yarns have been, I was actually kind of relieved in the end that I was knitting on ever so slightly bigger needles. It made the project go really fast, but also the yarn needed the space. If I'd been knitting on 2.25s, I think what would have ended up happening is the yarn would have been quite unpleasant at times to try to knit with. And that's never good. That's not great for my hands. So I ended up with a nice dense fabric without having to kill my hands. So that was sort of one of those like, oh, weird, I can't believe I did that kind of thing. But it worked out okay in the end. So it was fine. Okay, let's talk about weaving. I'm not going to do a new thumbnail thingy for the weaving thing because it's still a finished object. So I have been working on these for quite a long time. So I went back to the main screen so that you guys could see them. So I'm just going to lay them out here, and I have lots of photos to show you so that you're not trying to see on the little tiny screen here. But I wanted to just chat a little bit about the draft first. So for those who are weavers for those who are not weavers yet and have not delved into the world of floor loom weaving yet and are sort of like, Rach, this isn't hand spun, and I know. This is kind of my other passion and my other excitement. I think if I had been exposed or given an opportunity to try weaving when I was in high school, I actually think I maybe would be a professional weaver now. Like, I think I would have gone to school for weaving. That is how much I love weaving. And actually, my mom said something to me similar to that a little while ago. She's like, you know, who would have thought? For me, when I first sat down at a floor loom the very first time, it felt like, and I know this is a bit sappy, but it's true, I really did feel like coming home. You know how people talk about that with like musical instruments, or they talk about that with certain things. Like for me, sitting at a loom, it was like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. So one of the weave structures that I was working on last fall, so like a year and a half ago, was summer and winter. So I'd kind of worked my way through Overshot. I'd worked my way through some of the laces, mostly Huck, because I really love Huck. And then I had worked my way through Crackle I'd done a huge self-study on Crackle over the course of about a year. And my next one that I needed to sort of tackle, if you will, was summer and winter. So playing in with one of the programs for weaving software, I put together some sort of block just different blocks of how the different blocks would play together, and the different threading combinations and the different treadling combinations and how the colors would work. And I actually put in the tabby, the plain weave, I put that in as well so that I could see how it would all kind of work out and what that would all look like. And I played around with different combinations, and I did a whole bunch of different things here. So all of these treadling combinations are like different combinations for different things that you can do with summer and winter. So it was things like paired, I have my list here so I can tell you guys what they are for those who are floorloom weavers and know. It was paired O's, singles, or like bricks, Duca gang, which creates like columns. Yeah, I think those were the three that I was playing with. And what it kind of gave me was sort of an idea of what it would look like when you have your tabby back to back before you go on to your next set of patterning. So with summer and winter, the big thing is that you are same as Overshot, same as Crackle, you're working with 2 shuttles, and you are working back and forth so that you have your ground and which is your tabby, your plain weave that's running underneath, and then you have your supplemental warp your supplemental weft that is going over top of everything. So what ends up happening is you're carrying 2 shuttles the whole time. So that first shuttle, that teal there that I just threw, that's the supplemental weft that goes through that creates all that beautiful patterning. And then the red that I just threw after that was the plain weave, the tabby. So what ends up happening with summer and winter is you're sort of building it up just like you do with Crackle, just like you do with Overshot. And here I had 8/2 cotton, and for the non-weavers, just bear with me for a few minutes, okay? We're going back to Handspun in just a minute. But for the weavers in the group, I set this on my Leclerc Jack loom. This is my 45, my big 45 loom, 45-inch wide loom. I set the 8/2 cotton at 12 ends per inch, and because I was going to use I did use 8/4 cotton for the supplemental weft, and so it ended up the ground was woven at 12 ends per inch, 12 picks per inch, and it meant that the 8/4 cotton could fit in there and have nice selvages without being really cramped or without being too open. So it wasn't too open, it wasn't too closed, it was just kind of that happy medium at 12 ends per inch. And I did actually, because I walked away from this for so long and I let it sit on the loom for well over a year. It was I think I let it sit for about 17 months and I didn't touch it. It meant that when I went back, I checked my set, like I actually got my magnifying glass out and I actually like did my counting and my checking and whatnot, because I wasn't sure that everything was the same, and I couldn't remember what I'd set it at because I didn't take great notes and all that stuff. So what had ended up happening with this particular warp when I first put it on, it was never a long warp. It only was about 6 towels. And they aren't even very big towels. I'll show you them in a minute. What ended up happening was after I wove off the first towel, I ended up only weaving like a bit. I didn't weave very much. I should have brought you the little sample to show, but it's quite small. It's actually a little table runner now on our coffee table in our family room. What ended up happening was I didn't originally, I'm going to pause it here and then I can show you guys what ended up happening. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Hang on. There we go. So here, in the original towels, I didn't have the teal that's right here, and I didn't have the yellow. So originally it was 4 colors. It was the red, the orange, and the brown, and then blue. And the way that it ended up feeling was it just kind of was a bit flat. There wasn't enough oomph in the fabric. So I warped up the teal and the yellow, and I added them in. So that was sort of what ended up stalling me, was because I had added all of that to the warp, and then I tied on, and I just ended up leaving it. I wove a little bit, but then I didn't do much else. And I think part of it was just feeling a bit like I'd put in a ton of work. I didn't have a ton of towels. I still had all this work ahead of me. It's not super, super fast weaving because you are, you are obviously weaving with 2 shuttles, so it's back and forth. These are the finished towels, and I am so happy with them. They came out beautifully. Lisa, you're absolutely right. There's the problem. You are keeping track of time. That you don't do that. I think part of it was this project was going to be one of those, I wanted to put it on the loom. I wanted to have some Christmas gifts, and then it just kind of never got done. And I got really bogged down with it. And it was a lot of weaving. So as soon as I pulled them off the loom the other day, I pulled them off the loom on Friday. I actually hemmed them right away. I washed them and hemmed them. I let them, I pulled the fabric off. I let it sit for 24 hours. I figured it probably just needed to be rested. It was sitting on the loom for so long. So I pulled it all off. I zigzagged the two ends of the yardage. So I zigzagged the one end, zigzagged the other end, just to hold everything in place. And then I actually hung it on our clothes horse. I hung it on there overnight and let it rest for 24 hours, and then I washed it. I threw it through our washing machine on just a express cycle, which is our regular cycle, at 30 degrees for the water. I didn't put it on hot. I just put it on cool, and I threw it in the dryer afterwards. When I pulled it out of the wash, it was quite, it was a bit twisted up. I untwisted it, shook it out, and then I threw it in the dryer, and it came out actually, it came out actually so nicely out of the dryer, it almost didn't need to be ironed, which is pretty incredible. So, yeah, my mom saw them actually while I was hemming them. She had dropped one of the kids home from being over there and helping her out, and she saw them and she was like, oh, so she's definitely gonna get 1 or 2 for sure, because she really, really loved them, and she loved all the red. These were originally meant to be sort of Christmassy, kind of December-y type towels, sort of that holiday feeling, that winter, sort of something bright in the home, that red. But she loved them so much that I think I'll gift her at least a couple. So very happy with them. They're not huge. They're not super long. All of them could have had another set of, like, another color repeat on them. They're a bit shorter. But really, really happy with how they came out. And you can see all the photos there as they cycle through. So I got 5 towels in the end. And I think because these were so much work, I think probably I will keep at least 2 of them, if not 3. So yeah. Christine, I have no idea where I would put a floor loom. Yeah. You know, it's funny, you guys, I always hesitate to talk about weaving and floor loom weaving too much, because we used to keep it separate on Welford Weaves, but just the time to record 2 separate shows, it just is not realistic right now at this stage of life. My long-term goal is to go back to that, but, you know, just not right at this time. And I know that it just gets super, super, super technical, and you guys are so gracious about it. So like Pauline says, you know, that she's not a weaver, but it's lovely hearing and seeing these instructions. And, you know, that if I continue to talk about all of this, she'll probably end up being a weaver. I think it's one of those things, it's like this whole other language. It's like spinning and knitting. It's this whole other language. Sewing is a whole other language. Woodworking is a whole other language. You know, these are, you know, crafts, like, unto themselves, that have a whole language and a whole culture around them in terms of, you know, jargon, and, you know, the way that you talk about yarn is totally different, and it's so much of it. And I try not to get too technical on the podcast with the weaving, because the weavers know anyways. And if I started teaching it, we would be here all day. But it's also really fun to talk about and to share, and just give you a taste or a snippet of kind of what that world is all about. And to hopefully, you know, maybe plant some seeds that maybe now, you know, over time, a rigid heddle doesn't feel quite so overwhelming, you know. One of the great things about rigid heddle weaving is you can create yards of beautiful plain weave fabric really easily that you can do a lot with. If you're curious about what you could do with rigid heddle fabric, look at Get Weaving with Sarah. She's based in the UK. She has amazing patterns, and they're easy to fit, and you're not dealing with fussy fitting and darts and issues and stuff. So if you're sort of, also a novice sewer, all of a sudden now you've got sort of this whole world that's open to you that's not overly complicated. It doesn't have this massive, massive learning curve. So yeah. Yeah, thank you, Christine. She said they're nothing like you would find in a shop. That's so true. That's the one thing about hand woven tea towels. I just love that they're really one of a kind. You can't find them in a store. If you go to a maker's fair and it's a weaving guild, you'll probably find some, but each towel is always like truly unique to what that weaver did on the loom at that time with that yarn and with those colors. It's really special. So, okay, those two things done. I'm looking at the time. I'm not actually sure how long, I still am dealing with a bit of a dry mouth, so we might have to do a part 2 of this show and do like the rest of everything next week. So that may end up being what we have to do because it's almost noon. Okay, let's talk about more weaving. Okay, let's talk about what happened. So a year ago, I did a scarf, an Overshot scarf for my sister-in-law. And she was turning 40. I really wanted to do something really special for her. And at roughly the same time, I pulled out this battling set that I had in my stash for eons, over 10 years. And it was from Katrina. It was Crafty Jacks. It was one of her very first battling sets that she'd ever done when she first was getting started with the shop and everything. And it had been in my stash forever. And I decided to really savor it and to really just enjoy it. They're not necessarily colors that are ones that I really, really love, but they are also colors that I actually wear quite a bit. And when you're looking for a pop of color like this, it just speaks to you, the bright yellow and that sort of greeny teal color. And so I ended up taking each battling set. I talked about this on the podcast a long time ago, but it's a while ago. And I added a little bit of sparkle, clear sparkle, and I think it was actually clear Firestar. And I carded up row legs with each of them. So I just would work through each colorway individually. So each little battling set individually, make a bunch of row legs, spin them up on my support spindles, and then I go to the next color and then spin them up. And what ended up happening was this result here. Was I ended up going through a whole bunch of my spindles and kind of testing them out and sort of just really enjoying working with each of them and working my way through each of them. Each color ended up taking up about 2 spindles, and then I finished off over here, right below me here with the yellow. Tried to spin as consistently as I could, and then it was a matter of figuring out what I was going to do with all of those singles, because the big thing was I wanted to keep the color in order. So normally my first choice is not to chain ply woolen spun yarn. It tends to be very light, very airy. It doesn't tend to have a ton of twist in it. It tends to be on this, ever so slightly lower twist side. It doesn't mean that it's not structurally sound. It's still twist locked, and it's still, it has twist in it, but when you start tugging on it and yanking on it to make chain ply, you run the risk of it breaking. And I don't love being in the middle of chain plying and having break after break after break. But in this case, I ended up doing that and ended up chain plying it because I wanted to keep the colors together, and there really wasn't any other way other than leaving it as singles, which I also didn't want to do. So I was more willing to tolerate the chain plying than I was to leave it as singles. If I'd left it as singles, I probably would have run it through the wheel one time just to make sure that it was tight enough, but then you get into energized singles and they're overspun, and then it's really super fine, and I wanted yarn that was a little bit thicker. And because when yarn is really, really fine for me, I find it ends up buried in my stash. I don't necessarily use it when it's so fine. So there's sort of a happy medium of finding a weight of yarn that you're going to use, but also is structurally sound that you're gonna, whatever you use it for, that you're gonna enjoy using it for. So in the end, it went into my stash and I finished off the yarn. It was beautiful. It finished beautifully. It's a BFL. It's non-superwash. It's 100% BFL, and it just came out really beautifully. I loved this yarn in the end, and I finished it. I think I actually finished it last Christmas. So I think it was just over a year, about a year ago that I actually finished it. It was my spindling project that I worked on this time, the fall of last year, 2023 into 2024. So just over a year ago. So this was the finished yarn. And I had done this shawl and I thought I had a photo of it for you, but I don't. I'm going to grab one for you because for me to be able to explain to you what I did for my sister-in-law, you need to see this shawl. Let me see if I can find a couple of photos that I'll show you. Here you go. So I did this shawl for my sister-in-law, and it was for her 40th birthday. And what I used for it was Malabrigo sock, because my sister-in-law has very, she's blonde, blue-eyed. She's got, she wears a lot of wool, fitted wool jackets that are like camel color. She has a couple of rain jackets that are also neutral. She works in an office. She loves teal and seafoam and the bluey greens. And so I found this skein of Malabrigo sock, and the warp is 8-2 cotton in gray, a warm gray though. And then the weft is the Malabrigo sock, but then the ground is the 8-2 cotton as well. And because I had done a bunch of weaving earlier that year, this is 2023 going into 2024 as well, this project ended up being, I was trying to figure out that sweet spot between using sock yarns as the overshot and working through some of my sock yarns. This is going to be a little, it's just going to take me a minute to explain, but then you guys will get what I mean. And setting them a little bit too tightly. So setting the 8-2 cotton at sort of around like 16 ends per inch, 15 ends per inch. And then with the supplemental warp of the sock yarn going over top and working in, they just came out, the scarves came out, they were too dense. They were a little bit too, they didn't have enough drape. So I really opened this set up and I put it at 12 ends per inch, with the idea that the tabby that would run between the weft would be 12 picks per inch. So for those who are weavers, you guys know what I'm talking about. These supplemental weft structures, so like Overshot and the summer and winter that we were just talking about. So for those who aren't familiar with these supplemental weave structures, basically what you're supposed to be able to do is that your ground, your plain weave ground, your tabby, is being woven at with a balanced set. So 12 ends per inch, 12 picks per inch in this case. And then if you cut away the pattern yarn, so if you cut away all that blue in that scarf, that you would end up with a structurally sound fabric. That's the idea. What happened with this one though, and it turned out really well. It's really drapey. Katie really loved it. And it worked out really, really well. But the Malabrigo sock yarn was a little bit too thin, just a little bit too thin. So it came out really drapey and there's just a lovely movement to it, but it was just a little bit too thin. So it's more of like a stole than it is a scarf. Does that make sense? So I wanted to weave off I had enough on the warp for a second scarf. I actually have quite a bit more on the loom than I thought that I did. But I wanted it to be a slightly thicker, loftier yarn, not denser or heavier, just loftier, that it would take up that space and bloom in there. And so I used that gradient yarn. And so this is the gradient yarn that I just shared with you. That was the yarn that I did from Katrina. And this photo here, you can actually see the entire gradient of the entire skein. So this scarf came out quite a bit longer than the one that I did for Katie, because I wanted to get through the whole skein of yarn. And I did all my calculations and I did all my figuring to make sure that the skein was about the right yardage for the length of scarf that I wanted, it ended up being 20 inches longer than what I had calculated. So that's okay. It's about 100 inches whereas I wanted it to be about 80. And that's fine. 20 inches isn't actually in the grand scheme that much longer. So it's pictured here with my winter pea coat that I wear. This is a Canadian company based out of Victoria, British Columbia. They do recycling. They recycle wool and do upcycled wool fabric from Canada. And they're based out of Victoria. Like I said, they're called Anian, A-N-I-A-N, anian.com or .ca, I can't remember. But if you search Anian, they'll come up. Anyways, I got this coat at a warehouse sale. I got it for an absolute steal. I got it. It was $100 Canadian. Let's just put it like that. It was about a sixth of what it's worth. It was just one of those right place, right time. It was last year's. It was the only one left. It was my size. I wear this thing. I wore it all winter. I love it. It's super warm. It's beautiful felt wool that's been upcycled and remade. It's beautiful, and it's hand sewn as well. Yeah, I just love it. Anyways, so the scarf works beautifully. So it's back here on my dress form still. The trellis pattern came from Bertha Gray Hayes, from her book, and somebody was asking me in the Slack channel about the set and whatnot. So what I did, the 12 ends per inch, 12 picks per inch for the 8-2 cotton ground. It was perfect. It was like it was meant to be woven at that set with this yarn. With the Malabrigo, I felt like I couldn't beat because it would just go tight right away. This one, I just placed the warp. It was perfect. The set was perfect the entire time. Every time I checked, it was bang on. It just worked beautifully. The drape is lovely. And this is washed, blocked, ironed, ends are cut off, everything, all the things. I finished it yesterday. I am so excited to wear this. I am so happy with how this came out. Bertha's patterns in her book are usually quite a fine set and are quite, she used quite fine yarn and she had quite fine sets. So this trellis pattern in her book is actually woven quite tiny. I don't think it's 32 ends per inch, but it's something like that. And so blown up, the overshot, the patterning of the trellis really comes through, and I really like it. I think it's really, really pretty. So that is that project of the year. I am so happy with it. I'm just going to pull it off my dress form to show you just the drape. You can't see drape from photos. That doesn't work. Photos are great for most things, but they're not great for showing drape. So that is the drape on this. This is the type of fabric that I have been trying to create on my loom for a while now, even though I haven't been working on it for the last year. So I've been trying to create it for a year, but I haven't been working on it. So I did quite a few overshot scarves that I talked about. They were kind of more like stoles that I talked about on the show back in 2023. And I feel like the fabrics that I was trying to create back then, I got that with this. And it's just got a lovely feel to it. My mom saw it and she's like, well, that's huge. And I was like, yeah, it is, Mom. But like, look, it's just lovely. Like, look at how nice that is. This is how my sister-in-law wears a lot of her stuff, because then she tucks that up underneath and she puts it here, and then she can still put the coat on. I'm getting ready to go out, you guys. I'm gonna get ready. So she wears it like this, and then she doesn't have all that bulk down here, and she can actually like button up her coat. So this is sort of how she wears her stuff. I tend to leave my coat open. I tend to sort of leave it more like that, and then pull that through like that. But yeah, this is, to me, this is just like perfect. And I can wear it like that. Yeah. So very happy. I could wax poetic about this thing all day. But I won't, because we have other things we have to talk about. It is funny though, because of the 8-2 cotton, of the cotton ground, you get the, it's kind of funny. How can I explain this? Lisa, I might need your help with language here. So, but you can see how, like, I've been playing with this because I photographed it. It's been on my dress form. I've been putting around my neck. I showed my mom, all that kind of stuff. So you can see that there is some wrinkling that happens with the fabric because of the cotton. If this was 100% wool, I don't think you would see the same wrinkling. But what I have noticed with these sort of supplemental weft shawls and scarves and stuff that I've been trying to figure out sets and whatnot and make them work and drape like I want them to, I have noticed that because of the cotton ground, they definitely wrinkle. So yeah, really pretty. And the colors, I should show you the colors because you guys saw them on the spindles. But it starts off with the dark purple and then it goes to slightly lighter purple and then the navy blue and then the more like primary sort of sky blue and then the tealy blue. And then it goes to the green, the teal green. And then it goes, there's actually a darker teal and then a lighter teal, but the camera can't pick up on the nuance quite very well. And then there's a light teal and then a lime green and then a yellow. And it was funny. I started with the purple, the weaving, because I was the most excited about the yellow. So I was like, if I start with the purple, it'll motivate me to keep weaving and to get to the yellow. I don't like the yellow against the gray. I'm not a fan of this. I don't hate it or anything, but I think that these down here work a bit better. I think these colors worked better with that warm gray because the gray is, it's a warm gray. It almost kind of has a little bit of like a blue, pinky blue undertone to it, almost a little bit. You can't see it on the camera, but to me in real life, I can see it. And the purple really brings it out. But I didn't love the gray on this particular kind of very bright sunshine yellow. It's just not my favorite. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I still love yellow, but it's just not as pretty. Not as nice. But you don't know until you put them together and until you weave them and sort of see how they're gonna play together. I have another skein of it's our breed and color study from years ago that was on Charolais, and it's got a lot of white in it and that really kind of cherry red it's not really quite cherry red, but it was that red. And there was the yellow and the green in it. And I chain plied that as well to keep the colors clean. And I'd really like to see that skein of yarn on a black weft, a black warp and weft. I think on a black ground, I think it would just like pop like crazy. So yeah. So great. Thank you for your kind comments, you guys. And thank you for your kind words. That's very lovely. Yeah, I like the yellow too, Lisa. It's just I don't think it's as effective as the purple. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that purple end I think it really works. Yeah. Whimsical color pop. Yeah. we know how I feel about that. That's true, Lisa. Yeah. Absolutely lovely. Thank you, Wheezy. That's very kind. All right, last finished object, I promise. No, we've still got finished yarn. Last finished project is my sweater. It's back there on my dress form. It fits perfectly. It fits beautifully. I was gonna wear it, but it's really hard to talk about finished objects when I'm actually physically wearing them. But it is done. This is the Pink Velvet by Andrea Mowry. And this was sort of a labor of love because I have talked about the yarn on the podcast at length. So this was the Dorset that I spun last summer. I worked on this Dorset through the summer of 2024. It ended up being a 3-ply. I only had a certain amount from that particular fleece from that particular sale back in 2019. And I spun it all up into a sport weight 3-ply. It was about 16 wraps per inch in the end. Put it in my stash. I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do with it. And then when I went on my dyeing spree back in the fall, I pulled it out and I dyed it a very, very, very gentle depth of shade. I think I did it at 0.5% for the tealy green. And I finally got accurate photos, Dion. You know how it was showing as like quite a bit brighter. This is more like what it looks like. Even that back there is what it looks like. It's much more subdued, much more, it's almost like now that it's finished, it's like the camera can actually catch the colors properly. So very subdued. It was an 80-20 yellow to cobalt blue mixture of dye, and I did it at 0.5 depth of shade. I soaked it overnight, and then the next day I added the citric acid, brought it up to temperature, and I ended up with this. Or maybe I brought it up to temperature and then I added the citric acid. Dion, what did I do? Which one gives you the consistent results? Because I remember we talked about this, and then I did it, and then I did this after we had talked, because my other project had struck, the dye didn't strike consistently. It was this one, remember? Dion will know what I'm talking about when I hold this up. And so then we changed how I did it. Yes, acid last, that's right. I heated it. I have all my notes in another room. I heated it up, added the citric acid at 5%, and then, yeah, and this was what came out. So once I realized I had the yardage, and once I decided to do another pink velvet, my original pink velvet is one of my most worn sweaters that I've ever made. It is literally starting to fall apart. And so I really wanted to knit another one, and in slightly different colors, even though I do wear my other one a lot. I've actually even been tempted to buy the yarn again and make another one that's exactly the same. That's how much I've worn it. I skeined off the yardage that I needed for the tulips in the yoke, and I over dyed the yarn with russet. It's a colorway from the jacquard, in the jacquard family of dyes, called russet, and it's like it's meant to be like an orange, and I did that at 0.5%, and I got this beautiful kind of purpley wine color. That's a really kind of, it's quite nuanced in real life. It's quite fun, and so that became the tulips. And the rest is history. So I knit that up quite quickly, but then I got really stalled on the sleeves, because I had so much. I had enough yardage at the end to do slightly longer, short sleeves like I had originally talked about. But then as I was knitting, I still had yarn, and I knit a little bit longer, and I still had yarn, and I knit a bit longer, and I still had yarn. So in the end, I actually knit until I literally ran out of yarn on both sleeves. So they're 3/4 length, a little bit shorter than my original pink velvet, which is okay. I was hoping for the same length, but they're about an inch shorter, but that's okay. 3/4 length, and it's perfect because it's sort of a lightweight, like it's not going to be a heavy sweater, a heavy winter sweater by any stretch. It's a little bit lighter weight, and I'm really happy that this is done. I'm really happy with the tubular bind off on all of the edges, the neck, the sleeves, and the lower hem. That came out really, really beautifully on all of those edges. Highly recommend for this sweater. Because of all the 1x1 ribbing, it really works well. And other than that, I didn't make any modifications. I added the neckline last. I cast on and just knit the sweater, and then I went back and picked up stitches to do the neck. And with the sleeves, I literally kept trying it on to see where I was at in terms of needing to decrease, and where I needed to do the next decreases, and how much further I could push it in terms of how much yarn I had left, because I wanted to make sure I had enough to do the tubular cast off. And because you need a certain amount of yarn for that, I had to kind of just keep going, and then, you know, knit a couple of rows on the one, knit a couple of rows on the other, knit a couple of rows on the one, knit a couple of rows on the other, and then eventually I did get to the point where I had to stop. So very, very happy. I actually finished this when I was just in the last it was the first weekend after I'd finished treatment. So Thursday this week, I'm going to be 2 weeks out from treatment. And that first weekend that I finished, I actually sat and worked on this. And it was the first time I picked something up for a couple weeks. And it felt really good. I finally felt like I had the energy and the wherewithal that I wouldn't make a bunch of mistakes, because I was stalled on that one sleeve for a long time. It was sitting on my dress form back here for several months. You'll see it in the show when you watch like episode 311, 310, 309. It's back there the whole time with the needles hanging off. So there you go. It is done. I am super happy with it and looking forward to wearing it. The weather's getting quite warm here, but not warm enough in the mornings that you don't still need something. So I'm excited to pull it out and put it on. All right. Whew, that was a big show. That was a lot of talking. I think I might save my Oh, but I really wanted to talk about breeding color study. Okay, what we're gonna do, I have about 4 things that I wanted to share with you and wanted to talk about that were sort of like the tail end of the show and sort of project planning for the new year. So what we will do is let's talk about my finished yarns, because I do want to share with you the finished yarns, and then we'll talk about my project planning next show, even though it probably will already be in progress. My work's like, it'll probably be a work in progress. We'll see how I feel after Skeined. So let's talk about finished hand spun yarn, and then we'll go from there, because I don't want to completely, I still don't have like my regular energy levels. Like I still peter out. So yeah, let's do that. Okay. I'm actually really excited to share this with you. So on the Sunday before I started treatment, there was an impromptu workshop that our guild put on that was with Sherry of Conneagus Textiles up in Maple Ridge, which for those who are local, you'll know what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning. When Melissa, Melly Nets on Instagram talks about wool Yoda, this is who she's talking about. And so Sherry is lovely. She's a wonderful spinner. She's a wonderful human being. And she has a studio, and sort of, she calls it the barn. It's this whole other area on her property where they do classes, and there's like fleece galore that you can go look at, and books that you can look at. And we're going to talk about books next episode. I have some fabulous books that showed up, and yeah, it's just a really wonderful like place to go. It's almost like a sanctuary sort of in the city, if you will. And so the workshop was a 4-hour dyeing and spinning workshop, but I didn't bring anything to dye. I just didn't have the spoons to go through my stash and find something that I wanted to put in the dye pod. And they were dyeing with marigold and playing around with iron, and I've done that before. And really for me, it was a chance to selfishly go and hang out with my friends. My friend Megan was there, Sybil, Lisa, and Diana, and we just sort of chit-chatted all day. And there was a couple other ladies from Guild that are lovely that I'm just sort of starting to get to know, that are learning and at the beginning of their journeys. And so we just like had a lovely day. So what we were doing was we were spinning Haunnui. And so it's the Haunnui comes from New Zealand. It's from a farm that is specifically has like created this breed of sheep by crossing, okay guys, is it Merino and Lincoln? And they've come up with this sort of, or is it Romney and Merino? Oh shoot, I should have looked that up before I started talking about it, because honestly, it's just escaping me. They have different colors in their flock. Melissa and Megan of Bramble Ridge. So Melissa of Melly Knits and Megan of Bramble Ridge both have worked with the Haunnui farm, I can't remember what they're called, in New Zealand quite a lot, and bring in their fleeces and work with their fibers. They end up in a lot of their clubs and their bats and all that kind of stuff. Sherry had 4 colors to choose from for people to pick what they wanted to spin for the day. So you could do a darker gray, a taupe, a darker brown, or a natural white. I chose the lighter taupe just because I really love this color. And Sherry was really walking around and asking people to reflect on sort of how they were spinning it, what was working really well in their spinning. She did like a control card of everybody's different singles, and then she did another one that showed everybody's plied yarns. I spun this the way that I would spin this, spin Romney, the way that I would spin, yeah, anything that's kind of a medium to long wool, that is how I spun this. I put a moderate amount of twist into the single. I put a moderate amount of twist into the ply. I actually have photos for you guys to watch. Sometimes it's just fun to watch photos. The finished ply twist is about 40 degrees after washing. It really relaxed in the washing. It's a fine fingering, and it's 50 grams. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this per se, other than look at it and enjoy the prettiness of it, because it's just beautifully, if I can say so myself, I'm going to toot toot puff puff for just a minute. It is beautifully spun. It is consistent. It was easy to spin. It's very long stapled. And so because of that longer staple, it moves, if you pre-draft it a little bit. I've spun quite a bit of Haunnui over the last couple of years, because Megan of Bramble Ridge has brought it in quite a lot, and I've played around with it. But if you pre-draft it, it just ends up, you know, really drafting beautifully. You can keep it very consistent, very easily. It's a really lovely wool. If you have not had a chance to play with Haunnui yet, I highly recommend finding some. And hopefully, you know, shipping from New Zealand isn't too bad. Megan of Bramble Ridge here in Canada, she always has braids of it that are really nicely prepped, ready to spin. And you can just play with it. I was surprised at the undyed fiber, how similar it was to spinning the dyed fiber. I was really surprised. It really just felt the same. And it was lovely. It was a lovely way to spend an afternoon when I was starting treatment the next day and sort of looking for something to kind of distract me, but also something that would really feed my soul, getting to hang out with my friends for the day. It was really, really nice. So that was very enjoyable. I really enjoyed that. Okay, Breed Blends and Color Study. For those who are newer to the community, Breed Blends and Color Study has been our spinning study that we've been working on since January. There is still, I think there's half kits still available, I think, on the Bramble Ridge on the website. Bramble Ridge hand-dyed yarns and hand-dyed yarns. All of the links that you need for ordering and all of the links that you need to participate are in the Ketchup and Pickles post that is linked down below. So click on that. It will take you to Ketchup and Pickles. Scroll down. It's all right there. Just look for Breed Blends and Color Study. So these are my finished yarns. I finished these actually right before I started treatment. I really wanted to have them finished so that I could weave them up in May. So this is one of my projects that I am really, really excited about spinning in May. Weaving in May. I'm still going to stick with my original plan to weave. These came out really interesting. So I'm going to talk about them and then I'll put up the slideshows so you guys know which one's which. So I did a half set because I knew that I wouldn't have the time with other things that are going on in the background, like other projects that I'm working on. Couple of articles there was an article for Ply that I had going that's now done and submitted and all finished, done and dusted, as they say. But I have another one for Weft magazine that I'm working on right now. I just knew with and then there's some stuff with Sweet Georgia that I'm working on. There's just been enough in the background that getting through 300-gram braids I knew wasn't super realistic. So I did a half set. And the nice thing about that is I get to show you guys an option or some ideas for a half set, and then Rebecca's got the full set and she's doing socks. So it's kind of wonderful because we've designed this blend to sort of augment the yarn structure study that we have been working on through our book study in the Wool Circle and Spinning Staples, the Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs. And we were working through all those structures and talking about all of them in relation to sock yarns. And now Rebecca's kind of full circle working on her socks now. So I wanted to share sort of a different option, if you will. So I took the half set and I took each braid and I divided them in half. And this one is Fireside and what are they called? Oh my gosh. It's because it's been so long. I know it's Deep Freeze is one of them. Fireside, Deep Freeze, and what's the other one called, you guys? Fire Sense, Deep Freeze, and is it Winter Morning? Yes, Winter Morning. Oh, I can never remember that one. Okay, this one is Fireside and Winter Morning. So a single of each plied together, 2-ply. This one is Winter Morning and Deep Freeze, a single of each and then plied together. And then this is Fireside and Deep Freeze, a single of each and plied together. So they end up making, and I've got photos of them so you can see them a bit better, but that ends up making the 3. So from each, I'll go to the slideshow so that you guys can watch that while I'm talking this through. Basically what ended up happening was because the spinning was really super consistent, I was very, very careful to make sure that I was drafting consistently, that I would end up with the same grist for each of the 3 skeins, so that I could use them together in a weaving. They each came out just over 200 yards each, which is perfect because it'll make just the perfect width for I'm gonna warp up about 90. I think I'm gonna have to put a dummy warp on. So that means that on the floor loom, you warp up a warp and then you bring that forward so that you can attach your other warp, this stuff, attach it, knot them together, and then you can maximize your yardage and you don't sort of end up with a bunch of waste at the back of the loom. To maximize this and to make the stole as wide as possible, I think that's what I'm going to have to do. And it won't be tons and tons of ends, because this is, I'm thinking this will get woven at about 12 ends per inch, maybe 13 ends per inch, and then color blocked. So each yarn will be a strip, and then I'll weave it in 3 color blocks in the weft. So one yarn will be woven until it's finished, and then the next one, and then the next one. And all the same length. So it'll be a matter of figuring out how much weft I need for each block to make the 90 inches, 30 inches each kind of thing. So it's going to take some math and it's going to take some figuring out, but that is what I am going to do. So I'm excited to get that started. I think it'll be more, I think the final stole will actually be, in looking at the yarns and how similar they all are, I think they are going to, the stole itself is going to actually end up looking much, much more homogeneous than I originally thought that it would. I thought originally that there would be quite distinct stripes and quite distinct, like I thought it would be quite, I don't think that anymore. I think it's going to, just the overall feel of it is going to feel like a faux plaid. The other thing that I was thinking was holding 3 strands and weaving and warping it up so that there's 3 strands through the whole thing. So just, so there is no color blocking and it's just all blended. I did think about doing that as well to speed up the warping process, but also, winding the warp. But I kind of want to see what it looks like in the color block. I kind of want to see, like, are they as similar as I think that they are? Because I think that that's going to be the case. I think it's going to all kind of blend together. But I also think it's going to be quite pretty and quite homogeneous because the colors work so beautifully together. I think it's going to be dark. I think it's going to be moody. I think it's going to work. So we'll see. So I would like to get that on my Louette Spring. I'm hoping that I can work on that over the next couple of weeks and get that on. The weaving will be like that. It's just getting the dummy warp set up, tying on, and then warping, threading, slaying, and then getting ready to weave. It'll just be a little bit more work at the beginning, but it'll be worth it for the long-term payoff of maximizing the yardage. So yeah, I agree, Lisa. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows? And that's why it's fun. That's why we do what we do. In terms of the other projects that I'm working on, this yarn is my Beaumont alpaca. I'm not even going to try to like play around with the Ziploc bag and do all the things with that. I'm just going to go straight to photos for you guys. This was yarn that I had spun and dyed back in 2021. This was from Eve. It was a Beaumont alpaca that I spun on my Lendrum Saxony. And then this past fall, when I was on my dyeing rampage, I dyed it all up. I wasn't totally sure what I had for yardage, but I knew I had quite a bit. So I did all of the calculations this past week. And of course, I left my notes in the other room. But I have about 1,400 yards of this Beaumont alpaca yarn. And I have about 1,500 yards of the, this is a merino, hang on. This is a merino mohair that like a silk, like a kid mohair silk, but instead of silk, it's merino, and it's got a bit of nylon in it. This is going to be the weft, and this is going to create a big piece of fabric. Again, I have to do a dummy warp to maximize yardage to get a big enough piece of fabric to do what I want with it. So it is going to end up being a woven sweatshirt. So wish me luck with this. This is going to go on the Leclerc jack because I need a piece of fabric that's at least 40 inches wide because of draw-in. And so taking into account draw-in, taking into account shrinkage, I need to use my big loom for this. I am going to make I'm going to make view A, which is the top one there. So it's going to have a little bit more of a like a turtleneck kind of a collar. And I think the fabric is going to be quite drapey. I think it's going to be quite, I'm really hoping it's going to be quite lovely actually to work with. I think it's going to be quite, but it probably will need a lightweight interfacing in the collar. So I am prepared for that. It is, you cut 2 of the collar and then you create, and then you fold it and you sew it together at the top and you fold it to create a really beautiful collar, folded, turtleneck. And I think that one of the pieces is going to have to be lightly interfaced, so, like I said. So I think just to give it a bit of structure, otherwise it's just going to fall right down. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. So once I have the pieces cut and I can have a look at it and see how the fabric behaves and how it acts, I'll know for sure. But even my mom was like, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to need a little bit of something, something. So that is going to be, this is my like summer going into winter, or sorry, spring into summer project. I'm going to work on this. I'm really hoping that I have this done for the fall. That's my goal. And then the last thing is actually something for the School of Sweet Georgia, is finishing up this Shetland spin. I have been working on this forever. These were a whole bunch of samples that I spun up of my Shetland. I've talked about the Shetland on the podcast so many times, I'm almost kind of sick of it. This was a sample that I did trying to figure out the percentages of cotton and adding percentages of cotton to the Shetland to give it sort of a more of a planty feel, a little bit more of a drape, a little bit more of a little bit more interesting, basically. So on the far side there is just straight Shetland, and then in the middle is the middle photo there is a Shetland cotton blend with Corriedale added, because what ended up happening, and I did talk about this on the show, this was the my first sample of the Shetland cotton. It absolutely, no matter what I did, would not blend. It would not blend. I could have put it through the carder until the cows came home, and we don't even have any cows, so they'd never come home, and it would not have worked. And the yarn was really chunky. It was difficult to get into a spinning rhythm because every so often a chunk of cotton would come through. And this was all part of these discussions that we were having back in the fall around what wool fibers will blend with fine fibers and which ones won't. And this Shetland will not blend with most stuff. But when I added the Corriedale, so this is just showing you, this photo was showing you, I don't know if you can see it, but right by my pointer finger there, just below, there's a chunk of cotton there. That was through the entire thing, and it just never blended in and never blended well. So what ended up happening was I took, let me just find the photo here, sorry. I took 40% Corriedale, 40% Shetland, and then 20% cotton, because I wanted it to be a cotton blend. Like I wanted it to be a cotton yarn. That middle sample there is a 3-ply. I chain plied it just to get the feel of what the 3-ply would be. It is a beautiful little yarn. And with that Corriedale able to blend with the cotton, it's a little bit more porous. It's just more able to pick up that cotton and to blend it with itself. It's not as smooth and as resistant to that blending as the Shetland was. That metal skein was just perfect. So what I ended up doing, I had a certain amount of the Shetland cotton already blended, and so I took the rest of it and I added the percentage of Corriedale that I needed. In the end, there isn't quite 40% of the Corriedale and there isn't quite 20% of the cotton. It ended up being more like 50% Shetland and then like 25%, no, 30, it's basically 15% cotton. So however that all works out, 35% Corriedale and then 15% cotton, and it ended up working out okay. There are some neps left over from just being carded so much. So as I'm spinning, I've had to stop and pull a lot of neps out, which is kind of frustrating, but it'll pay off in the long run. I have 3 of these. They're all roughly 100 grams. And the first one is actually on the wheel. It's halfway done. I probably will finish it this week. This is the second bobbin. And then I have the same, but for the third bobbin, it'll be a 3-ply. I'm actually really hoping that it'll be fine enough that it'll create a really lovely fabric for a summer top. That's kind of what I'm hoping. So whether it's woven or knit, I don't even care at this point. But I am hoping that I can do something with it that will just really show off the work that went into this yarn. It has taken a huge amount of bandwidth to make this yarn. I'm really proud of this yarn. Now I just need to finish it. And I probably will dye it because it's quite heathered, and with the cotton in there, it'll take the dye really interestingly, it'll be a bit inconsistent. I could do an acid dye and then over dye it with Procyon so that it is a solid. What I thought I would do is a little 20-yard sample and then knit it up and see what I think. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Eliane says that she had a similar experience with 2 different batches of silk fibers. One wouldn't blend with wool, her gray tronder whatsoever, while the other one blended in perfect. It's, yeah, these different fibers, I think it's the wool. That there's different characteristics of that wool and how smooth the cuticles are and how smooth the actual wool fibers are. Seems to really depend on whether or not it'll blend with some of these fibers or not. And it's definitely an area that we need to do more study and have more discussion for sure. Yeah, great, Eliane. Oh, that's really interesting. Lisa said, was it the same wool, different silks? Yeah, so in Eliane's case, it was the opposite. I added a different wool, but she was actually working with the same wool, 2 different silk. So that makes me wonder what the characteristics of the silks were that they blended differently. That's really interesting. Very cool. Yeah, Amanda has a great question. She has 2 times 100 grams of 50% cotton, 50% merino, but she's not totally sure it's merino, and no idea how much twist it would need and how to finish a yarn to make from this blend. So what I've been doing with my wool cotton yarns is I've been treating them when I finish them off the wheel and they're plied and they're skeined and they're ready to go. I've been finishing them as if they are I've been using hotter water than what I would if it was 100% wool, but I haven't been allowing it to boil and sit there and like be scoured like I would if it was 100% cotton. And you don't want to boil your yarns and really like ruin them and let them get up to too high of a temperature. But what I did with this Shetland cotton Corriedale, the one in the middle here, because I had my dye pots going at the same time, it worked really, really well. I did put it in water with a little bit of gentle wool wash at 80 degrees Celsius, and I held it there for about 15-20 minutes to get the cotton clean, and then I just pulled it out and let it come down to temperature, to room temperature, and then I rinsed it. That worked really, really well. I think it's an area that we probably need to explore some more and try some different finishing techniques on and figure it out, because you want that cotton to get clean. You do want to wash it properly, but you don't want to felt the wool in the meantime. So I definitely think it's a bit of an issue. I also find that with the cotton in there, I need a little bit more twist than I would if it was 100% wool. So in that case, you're dealing with a 50-50 wool cotton, regardless of what the wool is, at 50-50 wool cotton. Your yarn is going to act more like cotton than it is wool, right? Because as soon as you get to that 50-50 mark, you've got a yarn that's going to start acting more like the other fiber than it will the wool. So I would definitely check your twist lock, make sure you've got enough twist lock in there that it's not falling apart. And I would definitely err on the side of needing quite a bit more twist. Yeah, and Dion's even saying that. I've noticed that the more cotton, the more twist. And that's totally consistent with what I've found. And Dion and I've been conferring quite a bit about some of these yarns and just trying to play around with these yarns and figure it out. Because these blends are definitely like a whole other area of spinning and figuring things out. And I know on the School of Sweet Georgia, Kim McKenna's new course is actually about bast fibers and blending with wool. And I think the reality is that a lot of people are really interested in these blends and are sort of struggling to figure out where to start. So yeah, best of luck. I'm excited to see what your yarn looks like, Amanda. It's going to be beautiful. All right, I have talked more than enough. You guys are probably sick of me. The other thing that I'm working on, and I won't go into it too much, but it's sommelier from Melly Knits for the month. She asked me to do some sample spinning for her this month. So this is going to be on bond, and it's a speed date. So it's bond by itself, and then it is bond with Dorset, a Dorset horn. And then it's bond with alpaca. I hope I don't have an allergic reaction to that one. And then it's bond with Icelandic. I'm excited about that one. That one's going to be a wild card. And bond with Wensleydale BFL. So I am really excited to get into that. It's about 10 grams of each. So very, very manageable amount of spinning. Not too much, not too little. And I'm excited to share with you guys the finished yarns. I might even have that done for next show because my goal was to have this done by the end of May. So I'm excited to do that and to get into that for Melissa and to get that spinning done for her. And then I'll pass it back to her and she can take a bunch of lovely photos. So I think that's it. Oh, you guys are so kind. You never get sick of me. That's very lovely. Thank you. I'm not sure my husband would agree with you. Although it's funny, on the weekend I said something about that. I said, oh, you must be so sick of me just being home all the time. And because I'm healing, right? I'm really focusing on staying home, doing quiet things. I think that's why I've gotten so much stuff done. I'm just sitting quietly. And he said, I never get sick of you. You're my best friend. I was like, okay, that's very sweet, but I'm sure that you do get sick of me. We all have our idiosyncrasies. I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for letting me wax poetic about all of my finished objects. It's always a pleasure to be able to share with you. And I hope, you know, and a little bit of, you know, tidbits of wisdom and stuff that I'm learning as I go sprinkled in there along the way. So I hope that that is helpful for those of you, especially those, like Pauline said at the beginning, you know, she's not a weaver, but she's interested in sort of hearing all of what we talk about when we talk about our woven projects. So I hope that some of that was helpful. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. Eliane, you just nailed it. He is so happy, relieved, all the things that I'm on the other side. The kids are too. It was really interesting. Last week, they were absolutely exhausted, like zombies. And I think it was the fallout of everything. Like it was all like they could relax because it was like, you know, things being in the rearview mirror all of a sudden. It's really interesting. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. It is a beautiful day here. I'm hoping I can go out for a bit of a walk this afternoon. Have a really lovely week. Rebecca will be here next week for the Wool Circle. She is traveling this month. They're in Edmonton, actually, Edmonton, Alberta, on a little bit of a family holiday, but also some work stuff for her and Jared. So I will be streaming the Wool Circle for her. So she pre-recorded it, and I will see you here, same time, same place next Tuesday for the Wool Circle. And until then, happy making. I hope that you're getting a chance to do some spinning, some knitting, some weaving, and that you're feeling really inspired by what you've got going on. So until next time, happy spinning, guys. Bye.